Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. Guys, look, sometimes being lifestyle, business people, whatever we are, he's in the woods, I'm on the iPad. We're going to just wing it. We just want to thank Steve for wearing a shirt today. Thank you so much for the podcast. This is probably the first time I've ever seen a shirt on you.
I mean, occasionally.
So, guys, I got introduced to Steve from Dennis. Over at Building Men, and been looking forward to this one for a long time. Here's the great thing about how different I am than other people. I actually have no idea what you do besides besides workout, skinny dip, and hike. So, all those things sound so great. So, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll see where we go.
Okay, right on. Well, glad to be here, man. Glad to be talking to you. And I'm Stephen Mathis, and I do those things. I do hike and occasionally skinny dip when I get a chance. And I definitely do work out. So what I do, I have a podcast as well, and I coach guys, primarily guys, on being the best that they can be. And really the areas that I focus on are physical, mental, spiritual, sexual self. So the areas that I kind of look at are fitness, nutrition, hormones, testosterone optimization, sexual health, and a lot around that. And then our mind and mindfulness and our spirit and all that. And the way that I kind of I went through my own journey. All the things that I coach on now and teach guys now are things that I struggled with, all of them. I mean, I was overweight, I was out of shape, I was unhealthy in every way, inside and out. And I went on my own journey, and I was a stock trader for a number of years along the way. And then I had a marketing company. And then at some point it kind of just became obvious that what I was sort of meant to do was to take some of the things that I had learned on my journey and that really had become, I guess, obsessions or just part of who I am, and help other people with it. So that's when I kind of started doing what I'm currently doing, which is the way that I really look at it is I really look at it as like, we're kind of like this bucket. If you imagine like a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket, and inside of that bucket is our life. There's a stick right here. I'm going to move the stick. Inside of that bucket is like our life force energy. You know, that's however you want to describe it. Chi or life force energy, whatever, however you want to describe it, is what's in that bucket. And we have things that we can do that kind of fill that bucket up. And then we also tend to have holes in the bottom of that bucket where that life force leaks out. And what I really try to do with guys is basically help them solidify that bucket situation. So we plug some of those holes, we add some things that are adding that life force in the top. So it looks different for everybody. But one of the main things that I definitely talk to a lot of guys about is kind of the sexual health aspect and getting off of porn and things like that. That's become a bigger part of what I do than I ever imagined it would be, because it's just what guys have needed. And it's, I think, something that affects so many guys. But whether it's that, it's losing weight, it's, dealing with anxiety and mental health. It's basically figuring out, like I said, from a physical, mental, sexual standpoint, how can we be the best that we can be, have the energy that we want to have, so then we can go out into our relationships, into business, into the rest of our lives, and experience the life that we want to experience. So that's pretty much, I guess, what I would describe as what I do.
So what's really interesting, right? In some of my coaching clients, some of the biggest anxiety, shame, depression, right? And I spent most of my life as drug addict and alcoholic, you think would be those, but it's not. And one of the things I see the most is bankruptcy, right? This is the shame that nobody talks about. So I say that to say this. A lot of the things that you touch in a coaching business aren't talked about.
Yeah.
And so how do you even get them to recognize, or maybe they secretly only mention it to you, right? These are things that in our society are super taboo, but I think are actually what's holding a lot of men back.
Oh, totally. That's, yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. It's at the root of so much. I mean, I've seen guys who've had their entire lives derailed because of the way that sexual health, the way that is in their life. Right. And I mean, not only relationships destroyed, marriages destroyed, things like that, which seems obvious enough. Of course that happens, but it affects every choice that we make. There's certain aspects of our life that filter out into everything else. So if those are going good or those are going bad, there's this cascading effect where it starts to filter out into all of our other decisions and all of our other actions and all that. And a lot of the things that I go into in terms of sexual health are that, because they, and mental health and these things that they affect all of those little decisions. One of the things that I like to talk about is we make 5-second choices, and then we live with the results of those 5-second choices the rest of the 24 hours. And our lives are dramatically altered as a result of these really relatively few little 5-second choices. It's like when do you drive past the liquor store to go to the gym, or do you stop at the liquor store? Right. When you're at the grocery store, you walk into, are you walking to the produce or you walk into the ice cream? Like, it's these little 5-second choices. And what I've found is that there's a few things that are like the foundation that set you up in such a way where, as you go into all those little 5-second choices, you're either set up in a more powerful way and you make better choices along those way, or you're set up in a worse way. Right. And our mental health and certainly our sexual health are absolutely that. It affects every little choice. It affects whether, a guy goes to the gym or sits on the couch watching Netflix, whether he drinks water or drinks that beer, whether he takes action on that business that he wants to build, or whether it lives in his mind forever and he goes, dies regretting it. It's like all those little choices that then add up to be big things are dramatically impacted by a few key internal things. So when we solidify those internal things, then we can go out and execute on all those 5-second choices.
And there's this book called Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. He says the problem with daily habits is they're really easy to do, but they're just as easy not to do. So the big issue is those 5-second decisions done over and over again, multiple times, get you to a place where you're like, fuck, how did I get here? But this is what I tell everybody. I might have been a functioning alcoholic for 20 years, but I woke up to the fact that I made the choice to be there. So I had the same choice to get better. Right. Yep. And so when you were, like you said, you lived through all these things and you're teaching people, when you were at your worst, what woke you up to the fact that started the shift in you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the things that happened in my journey was when my son was born, when he was 9 days old, we brought him home from the hospital. So I have 3 kids, by the way. My son's in the middle. I have a girl in each end. My son was 9 days old. We brought him home. He was doing fine from the hospital. When he was 9 days old, all of a sudden he started not doing very well. Mm-hmm. And in terms of just didn't really look very good. Wasn't really eating. That just, as a parent, you just sense like that day something was off. And then later in that day, we noticed that his lips were a little bit blue. So obviously, like at that point, I took him to the Instacare. We went from the Instacare to the ER. He ended up having open heart surgery 2 days later and was in the ICU for about 3 months, and then in and out of the hospital a couple times after that. And prior to that, I was not quite at what I would call my low at that point. I had tried to kind of claw my way out. Like, I'm like you. I mean, I had been an alcoholic, and I was actually an alcoholic later on. I mean, that was more severely, but certainly prior to that. And just in all the ways, at that time, it was mostly like superficially, it was like I wanted to look better. I was overweight and I was unhappy with that. And I had started to kind of try to claw my way back, but nothing really stuck. And when that happened with Andrew, it caused me to actually value life. I think that when we're stuck in patterns of drinking every day, of sitting on the couch, of eating shit, of like all these unhealthy patterns that we get stuck in, I think what's at the root of it is the fundamental, we're not valuing life. We're not valuing our own life enough to take care of it. and recognizing how much we should value it and how precious it is, I think. And so that was a big turning point for me. It certainly was not instant at all. But as I look back, that fundamentally caused me to appreciate life in a way that I just didn't before. And that included starting to appreciate my own life in a way that I didn't before. And I think that's something we all fall into, I think, at times. And I certainly had. So that was a big turning point. And then from there, it was like you said, daily habits, daily habits. I started, I read the book Psycho-Cybernetics. Are you familiar with that one?
It's been recommended to me a couple of times. I need to dive into it. Yeah.
Okay. So that was actually a big turning point for me, because Psycho-Cybernetics, what it really is, it's basically understanding that the way that our self-image guides us, right? It's like, essentially it sets the target for this automatic mechanism. And we have this automatic mechanism that drives us forward. And a lot of times we're not even aware of what's really in there that it's driving us forward towards. But that's what that book is about. It's about understanding that mechanism and then learning how to actually use it. And I read that book and I was going through that book at the same time. So when Andrew's in the hospital, I remember nights, pulling up to the parking lot to go sit with him all night. Cause either my wife or my ex-wife now, but one of us was there almost 24 hours a day. And I remember so many nights listening to that book, either while I was sitting with him or on the car ride there. And so it was like this time in my life where I was going through this really, really challenging thing. And at the same time, I was kind of understanding like, okay, this is kind of how we work. And I started to have a faith. I think that one of the fundamental things that I see people who are growing and moving and improving, and it's always a journey. There's no like, I got here, I mean, that, but it's like people who are on that journey versus people who are real stuck and not going anywhere. I think the fundamental thing is, do you have faith that you can be better? Like, do you have, cause there has to be some kind of little knowing that like, I could, like, what if I think I could, like, maybe even if it seems really far off, versus I'll see other people and I'll talk to other people where they just don't. And that's not to say that they won't ever, it's not like a fundamental part of who they are, but at that moment in their life, they don't believe they can do better. They don't believe that they deserve better, all those things. And I think during that time, that was like, I read that book and I started to see like, you know what? I can change this, like things can change. And then I just started being a different way. I think, like you said, it's all about daily habits. And that's the only way we become what we do every day. And I started changing the things that I do every day. And over the last, almost 15 years now, I've been in this progressive journey of trying to improve what I do every day. And that's, that determines who we become. So.
I love that. And I'm about to say something that people might actually not like, but here's the deal. You might actually be in a place with your choices where you don't deserve to be where you are right now, meaning you don't deserve better, but you can change that by your actions and how you show up for yourself. And so the moment that you own it, and when I got sober, I was reading Extreme Ownership. When I took full ownership of my shit and I pulled it out of the dark spaces and I shined the light on it. I said, this is me. This is where I fucked up. I'm overweight. I'm all these things. I'm in a marriage I don't want to be in. I fucking can't stand what I'm doing for work, and I'm going to blow up, all these things. I just had a podcast with a friend. Part of the joy of constructing your life is blowing the motherfucker into pieces, picking up the shrapnel that serves you, and leaving everything else behind. There's actually pure freedom in that moment.
Yep. So much, dude. So much. And that's something that's where the place that I've really been in the last 2 or 3 years. Like I went on in terms of my health and a lot of these things, I kind of went on this journey and I got in shape and I figured that out. And then I got really into like nutrition and hormones and all this stuff. And I started figuring that out. And then eventually I kind of figured out the mental health piece. So I've been going on this kind of inner journey, but a lot of the way that I had built my life in terms of what I was doing for work, in terms of the relationship that I was in, all these things, it was becoming more and more clear that they weren't right. And so what I've really done the last couple of years is exactly that: blow it all up, tear it all down. And the beautiful thing is that when you tear it all down, it faces you to look at what's left. And when you do, and that takes a lot of that like deep inner work, you realize that what's left is actually the most important part. And it's like the part that you weren't even realizing was there. We get like, we have these images of like that define our identity. I am a husband. I am a father. I do this for work. We have all these identities, and a lot of those things, some out of my control and some by choice, were torn down, and I've torn those things down. And then when those are gone, then you have to look at like, okay, who am I really? Like what's left when you tear everything down, you tear all the labels, you give it all up, or it gets taken away or whatever. That's when you really.
And a lot of what people will say, because I follow you and I watch you with your kids as much as I can see on Instagram. A lot of people will say that you're selfish, right? I'm just using people that are ridiculous. You're selfish because you decided that there had to be something better for you. But what is actually, I would venture to guess, what your kids are actually saying is that dad cares enough about himself to be happy. So when dad's happier, he can show up as a better father, not somebody that's stuck in a position that he doesn't want to be in anymore. Am I wrong or right?
No, you're not wrong. Not wrong at all. And I would say, I think that if there's anything that I want to teach my kids above all else, it's to just live the life they want to live. That's what I want for them, and in order to live the life we want to live, the habits have to be there. Like we have to do all these things. It's not, so that's part of it. But part of it is also be willing to be who we are, not who, this person thinks you should be, or that person thinks you should be. Like, I think often all of us growing up, certainly, I think we fall into this thing of, we try to be, for instance, who we think our parents want us to be, who we think our teachers want us to be. And then we get married. And I know for myself and a lot of people, we try to become who we think our spouse wants us to be, right? Or we continue, even at 30, 40, 50 years old, whatever, we continue to be who we think our parents want us to be. All these, right? And I think there's a fundamental difference between that and just saying, you know what, this is who I am, and this is who I want to be. And that's what I want for my kids. And what it's taken for me to move towards that long-term is you got to give up the other stuff. You got to give up, and you got to be willing to like let go of those other things and have people think less of you. And, that's part of it. I mean, I didn't, in terms of like my marriage, we just changed. We changed. It wasn't just like I woke up one day and I was like, I'm not happy, I'm going to end it. Not that there's anything I think wrong with that, but we just grew in different ways, and we grew in different ways, and we're trying to hold on. And eventually it just doesn't work. But, all the ways in all the areas, that's my biggest thing now is I'm willing to give it all up, tear everything down at any time to build what I want to build. That's the only way. If you try to hold on to the old stuff, it's like you're having your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time.
And I try to tell everybody, because I consult a lot of entrepreneurs. Like, think of entrepreneurship as you're walking down a hallway, all the lights are on, and there's no doorknobs. That's entrepreneurship. And if that's the case, it's so easy to go back to comfort, right? The toxic relationship, the job that pays you well. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they're giving you those things just enough so you won't chase your dreams. They're giving you just enough to keep you happy. They're feeding you the foods that you shouldn't be eating just enough so you don't know who you truly are inside. And the scary thing is, the reason I fast, the reason I do weird shit is because I want to push myself to see how far I can really go. And what I realize is that we're really operating about 30, 40% of what we truly are capable of.
Oh, yeah. If that. I'm sure you know who David Goggins is. I'm a big fan of David. Yeah, I'm a big fan of David. And I think, like his style isn't for everybody all the time. It's like,
True story. When somebody asks you for personal health, development health, don't start them off with Goggins. I made that mistake with my cousin. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely, his book Can't Hurt Me is fantastic. I think that's actually, I mean, I love I love staying in touch with all of his stuff, but that was a fantastic book, actually, one of my favorite books of all time. And when you see what he came through, and like I said, his current style isn't for everybody, but my point in bringing him up is this: he talks about the 40% rule, which is that even when people think they are giving their best, even when they think they're giving their absolute most, they're still only giving 40% of what they're really capable of. And I found that to be true. And so I think a lot of times we're running it like 20%, maybe. Like we're running at a fraction of it. And you know, I think there's a lot of things that play into that. I do think there's actually a fear that a lot of people have of they actually fear what they're capable of. There's just like, I mean, part of it is the unknown, but in a lot of ways, I think people sometimes fear success, whether that's success in their health, their business, whatever. There's a fear of stepping into that. And
because within that success, what is around you might change, right? What the level of who I need to become, right? And one of the things that I realized was what was really affecting me was I would be very tired, but then I would go to a networking event and everybody needed me to be on. So I would drink vodka Red Bulls and then I would black the fuck out, right? And what's interesting now, when people meet me, let's say they know me just through Instagram or podcast for a year, and they're like, dude, you're pretty laid back and you're not like high strung. And I'm like, or you're not like aggressive. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty chill. And so like, even me every day is still getting more comfortable with that, not on Austin. Because there is some, you know, whether or not people want to admit it, there is some showmanship to your brand, to your thing. And we are different human beings. You're different with your kids than you are by yourself. You're different with your clients than you are by yourself. And it's not because we're comfortable with who we are internally, rooted down, we can show up in different environments for the needs that environment needs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that that I try to approach that is like this fundamental base that never changes. And then there's layers, and those layers change depending on what mode I'm in, you know, and who I'm interacting with. Right. But for a long time, that base was not there. It was like this hollow, you know, foundation of sand. It wasn't there. So that's, I think, one of the critical things that we need to do as human beings is figure out what our real foundation is. Because like, we're going to have different people coming in and out of our lives. We're going to have different challenges. We're going to experience all these different things. But what is the foundation that you come back to? Like, when you go through a hard thing, what is carrying you through that? That's what I didn't have for a long time. I felt I had no foundation. Right. And that's what led me to do things like, you know, I mean, you talked about the, you know, vodka and Red Bull at a networking event. I mean, I would do things like go for a workout running hill sprints and buy a box of wine and drink like, you know, 3-4 glasses plus of wine from a box of wine before I ran hill sprints. Like, that gives you an idea of how much the foundation was not there. Like, I physically, externally, it looked like I was in great shape. I'm like running hill sprints, right? I'm drinking wine before I do it. Like, I was not in a good place. And that's what I think really, really matters. And what's interesting is that in a lot of ways, all of the external stuff, business, relationships, our body and physical health, all that stuff is really, it's just an external representation of what's happening internally. Like, that's the way that I see people now, and the way that I approach my life now too is, you know, whether it's like they're overweight or they're, you know, whatever challenge is, it's all based on what's going on inside. That's our external life is just a representation of our internal world. And for a long time, I didn't do any of that inner work. And I'm sure that you, as you went through getting sober, I mean, that's what that is. It's inner work, right?
Mm-hmm. I think it's ultimately, you know, and that's the question I was going to ask you. You know, you coach men, I coach people, I coach women, I coach men. I find there's an overall theme that runs through the center of every single one of them, Have you found that to be common as well? That there's like maybe not everybody kind of has their own quirks and their own things, but is there a common theme that you see in your clients?
I mean, I guess what I would say is just the commonality of being human. I think one of the things, like, as I've spent a lot of time meditating. I mean, comparatively, the last maybe 7 years or so. And one of the things that I think is interesting with meditation and with looking inside of ourselves is the more that we understand our craziness, the more we understand other people's craziness. And it's like, I think there's the fundamental challenges of being human. Like, everybody wonders, am I good enough to do that thing? Everybody wonders, do they like me? Everybody wonders, like, we have these same things and these same challenges and these same struggles. We're all lonely at times. We're all stressed. It's like everybody kind of faces those same things. And so I guess that's the common thread, is just those base things of being human. And they apply whether you're, 15 years old, a kid going through high school, or you're 55 years old, and whether you're a man or a woman or whatever, there's the fundamental experience of being human is we all face a lot of the same challenges. And I think that's really just been the biggest thing that I've seen. Other than that, the other thing, I guess, from a more sort of like practical standpoint, is daily habits. That's what it all boils down to. Whether it's business, it's your relationship. Like, for instance, I was talking to a guy on a coaching call a week or so ago. And one of the things that we were talking about was his intimacy with his wife. And they just, like, they weren't close anymore. And so one of the things that I talked about with him was, like, what are the daily habits that you're doing to support that? Like, are you, start going and giving her a hug goodbye instead of just saying, bye, honey, I'll see you later when you leave for work, right? Like, when you get home, do you just say hi, or do you walk up and look her in the eyes and say, I'm so glad to see you, like, give her a hug and a kiss? And it's those little habits, whether it's the little habits in a relationship, it's the little habits of how you take care of your body, it's the habits, and it's all habits. So it's like, that's really what I've come to understand is the biggest thing that I, in a lot of ways, help people do is, there's some specifics in terms of, like, some of the, fitness stuff and nutrition stuff and sexual health stuff and some of it. But what it really boils down to is I try to help people have better habits. Because once you start figuring out how to modify your habits, then you can apply that to everything. And that's what the people that I see growing and getting better and better and better are the people who understand and have the ability and the skill to implement a new habit or change an existing habit. Because once you have that, then you can apply it to everything. You can apply it to how you eat. You can apply it to your, fitness. You can apply it to your business, to your relationships, to all the things. But until you start realizing, I am what I do every single day. What do I do every single day? And is that leading me to a place that I want to go? Like I said, it applies to, it's not just about your health. It's, relationships and business and all of that. So that's I guess those are the common threads that I see.
Yeah. One of the funniest things, I don't know who it was, but he was talking about how she went to an event where they were talking about, like, self-talk or something. And, like, her husband watched football every day. He didn't give a shit about her. Like, she's in the kitchen and, like, she, like, put the tape on and, like, he asked her to turn it down. This went on for, like, 3 weeks. And, like, she didn't say anything about the tape. She didn't even say what the tape was. And then he said, like, he turned on the football game. He said, can you turn that one up? Like, I like that one. And then, like, he started changing, and then they started loving each other again. And I always took that story to heart, because ultimately, as a partner, right, and you have to change yourself first before you ask another person to change as well too. And here's the scary thing: they might not want to, or they might not even know how to, right? And one of the things that I realized is, how do you, as a partner, I'm going to make sure that I'm holding up my end of the bargain, but I can't fight for you if you won't fight for yourself. And that's ultimately where I got to. And ultimately, to have a proper partnership and a partner, symbiotic movement forward, we both have to be wanting to grow and get better, and ultimately take responsibility of where we are in said relationship, and not just pass blame, because that's what most of us do.
Yeah. Oh, so much. I mean, I think most of us pass blame in all areas of our life. We're always like, whether it's in a relationship or it's other aspects of our life, it's easy to fall into that. Someone or something is at fault, and taking ownership of it. The other thing I think that I see so much, that's, I think, a battle for all of us on an ongoing basis, but I see a lot of people struggle with it. And that is, they wait for the feeling before they do the thing. And you have to do the thing and then you get the feeling. It's like, whether it's the relationship, like you don't wait until you feel close to like be intimate or whatever. You are together and that will make you feel close, right? Like you don't wait until you have energy to work out. You work out and then you get the energy as a reward. And that fundamental, that fundamental choice is at the root of a lot of it. A lot of people, and I've been there too, wait until like, when I feel this way, when this thing then no, you do the thing and then you get the feeling, then you get the motivation, then you get the energy, then you get the connection, then you get the business. Like you got to do the thing first.
People ask me all the time, when do you not feel like doing what you're doing? I said, every day.
Right?
Every day. But every day that I make, every day I make the choice to get up and work out. Every day I make the choice to choose myself first. Every day I make the choice to choose to show up for it, because I get to, not have to, I get to, is a day that I'm separating myself from the part of me that doesn't want to do it. And that's never going to go away, no matter how much money you have, no matter how much business you have. That's the separation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when I finally made the move to actually build this business that I'm in and do what I'm doing right now. Is one day I just decided I'm really not sure if I can do it. I'm really scared to do it. I really don't want to put myself out there, but I'm going to do it anyway. You know, and it's like, there's so many days, just like you said, there's so many days right now when I'm not, because I'm human, right? So I have days like you where I'm not in a great place or whatever. And I go out and I shoot the workout video or I do the thing or whatever, because that's what I've decided to do, because that's what I know. These are the choices that I know lead to where I want to be. And it's the same thing like with working out. I mean, I would say, I go in streaks, but I have lots of days where I do not feel like working out. Like, yeah, I mean, I definitely enjoy it sometimes. And there's some workouts that I'm kind of like, let's get it. But there's a lot of days when I'm like, I do not feel like doing this. But the beautiful thing about daily habits is that it removes some of that choice. If you're doing something once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, occasion, whatever, then you're faced with a choice. Okay, am I going to do it today? No, I'm tired. I'm going to do it tomorrow, right? If you do it every day, then there is no choice. It's like, did the sun come up today? Is it a new day? Yep, I'm going to do that thing today. And that's when everything changes. And that's the way that I try to approach things now. I'm not perfect, but whether it's, it's health stuff, it's business, it's whatever, it doesn't matter whether I want to or not. Motivation is like, it's like being cheery. It's like, sometimes you're going to feel like that. Sometimes you're not. Like, you can't just wait. You can't just decide like, I'm going to live this way when I'm like happy inside. Like, it's going to come and go. Motivation's going to come and go. It's like, you got to just decide, I'm going to do this regardless. And it removes that choice.
I love it. 100%. You're having a great podcast and you have other things going on. How would people find out about what you have going on?
The best way is the podcast, for sure. I mean, I have some other trainings. I'm on the social networks, doing all that. But I think the best doorway for sure for people to find out more about what I do and connect with me is the podcast. So it's called Holistic Alpha. You can find it on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the places. And then from there, you can link to the website and social networks and all that. But yeah, I do publish on Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, pretty much every day. And the podcast is anywhere between twice a week and every day, depending on what's happening. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that any of you guys are listening will find different, because that's what I think what really matters. Like, there's a whole world full of information. Why should you try listening? Some of the things that I talk about in terms of sexual health, especially, are things that do not get talked about virtually anywhere else. There's so few resources, and they're such important issues. So whether it's porn, it's, daily sexual habits that are dragging you down instead of lifting you up, that kind of stuff. I talk about a lot of stuff on the podcast and in coaching calls. I have a lot of coaching calls where countless times where guys are like, you're the first person I've ever talked to about this. So yeah, that's the best way to find me, is the podcast.
I love it so much. Guys, if you like this episode, make sure you send it out to your friends, share it with somebody that you think will get some value, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Austin.
Thank you for listening to Construct Your Life with Austin Linney. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to start constructing your life by taking immediate action on what you learned. For show notes, resources, and more information on one-on-one coaching with Austin, visit constructyourlifepodcast.com.